He's going to be sitting here on the curvy couch with us talking about his career, the ups and the downs.
Great. But the agonizing part was he talks about how close he got to making the Patriots. That would have been a perfect team for him to be on, but for some reason the wheels came off.
He has a whole chapter about it. The chapter's called The Cut, being cut. It was his third time being cut, and he worried, does this mean I'm never going to put on a uniform again? Talks about his struggles.
So he's coming up in about a half an hour. In the meantime, straight to our top story on this Monday morning. It's round two. This morning, Wisconsin election officials are kicking off a recount.
President-elect Donald Trump firing back on Twitter, defending his election.
Yep, I cannot believe we're here already. Kristen Fisher is live in Washington, D.C. with a few tweets to review.
Yeah, here we go again. The Trump transition team is now calling Hillary Clinton a hypocrite, and this recount effort, led by Green Party candidate Jill Stein, a scam. Listen to what Trump's incoming chief of staff, Reince Priebus, said yesterday.
This is ridiculous. This is a fundraising, notoriety-driven fraud by a person who won 33,000 votes in Wisconsin to President-elect Trump, who won 1.4 million.
Now, news of this recount led to Mr. Trump's longest Twitter tirade since becoming the president-elect. 11 tweets in one day. Here's one quote. In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally. He then claimed serious voter fraud in Virginia, New Hampshire, and California. So why isn't the media reporting on this? Serious bias, big problem. Now, to be clear, Mr. Trump has provided zero evidence supporting either claim, and there's been no indication of any voter fraud or illegal voting. In fact, California's Secretary of State is calling his allegations reckless, absurd, and unbecoming of a president-elect. But Trump's senior advisor, Kellyanne Conway, argues that what's really unbecoming is Clinton joining this recall effort. She also says the president-elect is no longer ruling out a criminal probe into Clinton's use of a private email server. Brian, Ainsley, and Steve?
Well, that will get her attention. All right, Kristen, we thank you very much.
If this gets ugly again, you wonder if Donald Trump might rethink the fact that he's not going to aggressively pursue an investigation on Hillary. If they start doubling down.
It's just crazy. I mean, he won by tens of thousands of votes. When they did the recount down in Florida, they were separated by like 500 votes.
That's right.
It's a pipe dream.
So what the Democrats, in particular the members of the Green Party, want us to believe that the Russians rigged the election. Okay, do you really think that is possible? Well, the administration does not think so, because the administration said they detected no hacking and the election was free and fair from a cyber security perspective. So while the administration says they weren't hacked, the Green Party says we're going to spend millions of dollars to do that. Ultimately, though, you got to figure what they're trying to do is just cast out on the future presidency Donald Trump right from the get-go, just to sully him.
They can't understand why Michigan, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania went the other way. Pennsylvania's probably not going to do it. It looks like Wisconsin will do it starting today. They'll get a format. It'll be actually done by the middle of December. Remember when Hillary Clinton said this in October?
Because that's horrifying. You know, every time Donald thinks things are not going in his direction, he claims whatever it is rigged against him. That is not the way our democracy works. We've been around for 240 years. We've had free and fair elections. We've accepted the outcomes when we may not have liked them. And that is what must be expected of anyone standing on a debate stage during a general election.
All right, so she's a hypocrite. She was saying Donald Trump, she couldn't believe Donald Trump was saying that.
Yeah, but that's when she was going to win.
Right, that's true. So if you go on Jill Stein's website, she breaks down the numbers and how much it's going to cost to do the recount in each state. Total, for all 3 states, it's going to cost $2.2 million.
Wait a minute, she's already raised $6 million.
More than $6 million. And it also says on that website, if there's extra money, that'll go back to the Green Party.
Oh.
Or go back to prevent rigged elections in the future.
And if 5 people go on Jill Stein's website today, it'll be 5 more than went on leading up to the election.
No, she's collected more money with this campaign than she did when she was running for president.
I actually think the Trump people are making a big mistake even giving it the time of day.
They've got to respond.
But they could respond and say, we're moving on, we're not even acknowledging it. Reince Priebus and Kellyanne Conway are all over the Sunday shows. Listen.
Hillary Clinton was the one to say it's time to accept the results of the election and look to the future. And it was their team that cut a deal with our team that said when the AP called the race, they would call within 15 minutes and concede, which they did. It is a total and complete hypocritical joke that the group of people that thought that they were nervous about President-elect Trump not conceding are the people that are conducting recounts in states where we've won by over 68,000 votes.
Donald Trump won. A lot of people like that wall. They want illegal immigrants, criminal illegal immigrants to get out of the country. They're not for these sanctuary cities. And Greg Abbott, who is the governor of Texas, is jumping on board. And he tweeted this out over the weekend. He says, yes, I'm going to sign a law that bans sanctuary cities. Also, I've already issued an order cutting funding to sanctuary cities. Here's the tweet.
It's going to be fascinating because we're going to find out. We know Donald Trump, how he feels about it. We know he's been moved by the family members of those who have been lost to illegal aliens who have been here too long and killed too many. And, yeah, like Kate Stanley. But I'm just wondering when President-elect Trump does it. Does he take on de Blasio and Rahm Emanuel and every city in San Francisco, every city in California right away, like the Gitmo, the Gitmo signing that Barack Obama famously had the first day? Does he say the funding's gone tomorrow if you don't declare sanctuary cities? Yesterday's news.
Well, you know, it all started because somebody asked Greg Abbott down in Texas on Twitter. Austin just said that they're going to continue with sanctuary cities, and he responded, I'm going to pass a law and cut off their funding. Will Donald Trump do essentially the same thing? Stay tuned for that.
Yeah, we'll find out if the president-elect will actually do that and when, in fact, he will do that, because that might be a standoff he wanted to avoid, or does he want to lay down the gauntlet and say, I want to show you exactly what I'm going to do as president, everything that I said I did on the stump.
Does he have the jurisdiction to do that even for states that, like Greg Abbott, Republican? Of course you're going to hear that from Texas. No, but what about California?
But for example, Ainsley, if there's federal money going to California, he could just say, until you comply, you're not getting the federal money. Right. Make up for it somehow.
All right.
So anyway, stay tuned for that. In the meantime, we've got some news with Heather.
Nicole Lapin. Nicole, how long will it last?
I think it's going to last quite a long time, guys, if Friday was any indication. We saw online sales, in particular, top $3 billion. That's the first time we've ever seen it hit that mark. And now retailers are stress testing their websites because we're going to see even more of that today. It has been estimated that 10 minutes offline for major retailers can equal $2 million in lost sales. Wow. So time is money today, guys.
Okay. So, you know, I saw all the crowds on the television coverage, and it looked like the stores had a good business as well. But I'd imagine some people were at the stores actually looking to see if the price they were looking at there at Walmart or Kmart or Target was the best deal out there, right?
Yeah, we're not shopping like it's 1999, guys. Cyber Monday is not one particular day. It's really been like a cyber week. And we've been seeing, you know, those lines that we're looking at right now dissipate a little bit, off about 10%. Online shopping, obviously, up about 20% now. It has been dethroned. Cyber Monday is no longer the online shopping queen, I will say, or king of the week. But the night is young for me in Los Angeles. The day is young, of course. So 75,000 deals on Amazon alone. So we'll see what ends up happening today.
Wow. And I think they're going to change them every 5 minutes. All right, Nicole, we thank you very much for joining us live from L.A. today.
Thank you, Nicole. You know,
just one day after the election, Hillary Clinton had this message for her supporters.
Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
Okay, but apparently many of her followers are still refusing to accept the results, even going so far as to sending death threats to members of the Electoral College, demanding that they switch their vote. Michael Venerian is one of those people. He is in the Electoral College. He's an official voter, and he joins us live today from Detroit. Good morning to you, Michael.
Morning. Thanks for having me.
So it started pretty much immediately after the election. What kind of messages were you getting?
Well, you know, obviously you got the fellow Republicans and Trump supporters that gave me some well wishes, but unfortunately right after that I got inundated with Facebook messages, emails, tweets, actually letters to my house. I'm getting like 4 or 5 every day, and a lot of hateful, angry messages, death threats, death wishes. So it's been quite the experience so far.
You know, I wouldn't have the first idea where to start locating members of the Electoral College. Did somebody put your address and your numbers out there on the internet or something?
Yeah, so a lot of that information is public. And essentially what happened is some big groups came together. They collected all of our information, compiled a list, and put it out on the internet and encouraged people to contact us. So that's how they got that information.
Okay, so folks understand the kind of threats you're getting, in addition to 4 or 5 a day, a number of death threats. We're going to show some of them. First one, Michael, I'm not going to argue with you, man. He's the president. Deal with it. Person you support, bigotry, hate, and racism. I hope you die. Michael, wow, you're so ignorant. It's depressing. Thanks for wishing my death. And the person wrote, back at you. You got a lot of these, didn't you? How'd that person wind up with your cell phone number?
Well, so that was a Facebook message, and
okay.
You know, obviously our names are public, so they just punched it into Facebook, sent a message, and that was kind of how it happened. And I haven't gotten any text messages. I've gotten Facebook messages, tweets, emails, and letters written to my home address.
Well, here's another example of a threatening text. The person wrote, "Hey, I'll find you and put a bullet in your mouth. You and your Republican Party, you're a bandwagon member because last I checked, you was blank." And then, Michael, you wrote back, "Want me to send this threat to police?" And then the person wrote, "Like I thought you blank." And then you wrote back, "You're an awful person." There are a lot of awful people out there, aren't there?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and a lot of them are coming out of the woodwork after this election.
You know, what's curious is the tolerant left, as it turns out, is not so tolerant, are they?
No. The hypocrisy is outstanding. I mean, I watched Hillary Clinton talk about how awful Republicans were and how awful Trump supporters were.
Right.
And now, not just myself, but electors across the country are being harassed by people that just can't accept the election results. It's disappointing.
Yeah, no kidding. So we've heard famously of some electors who said, you know, I'm going to go rogue and I'm going to vote for the other person. You are obligated to vote for Donald Trump, and you proudly will, right?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, in the state of Michigan, as is in many other states, we're not even allowed legally to change our votes. In the state of Michigan, if we try to change our vote from how the popular vote voted in Michigan, our votes will be voided and will just be replaced by another elector. So it's a pointless endeavor in Michigan and in a lot of other states.
Well, hang in there, Michael. I know you're getting a lot of messages, but you're doing what you feel is the right thing, and we appreciate it. All right.
Well,
Michael
thanks.
Benarian joining us today from the city of Detroit. Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right.
Navy SEAL of 13-6 Commander, and Scott McEwen here now to give us an inside look at their new book, American Commander, which is really about you, Congressman. And thanks so much for joining us in studio and everything you've given to the country already.
Well, and I'd say the book is not about me per se. It's about the exceptionalism of the fighting force,
Which you saw up close.
Yeah, and I had the opportunity and the honor to witness these magnificent fighting forces on the elite and help train them. And I think at the end of the day, when you finish the book, it should make every American proud that we have people like this that sacrifice and are committed to excellence.
And no one had to sell you on that, Scott, because you do help to write American Sniper. You're very good friends with Chris Kyle, so you knew there was some similarities in traits.
Yeah, I think this is a continuation of the message from American Sniper in many ways, because Ryan is the man that was in charge of training at Buds in Coronado for a number of years, trained men like Chris, like Marcus Luttrell, like many of the other people we've heard about in the SEAL teams, including SEAL Team 6, and was a commander there for many, many years. So we've got the best of the best here training, just like a coach in an NFL football team. Ryan was one of the guys that made these guys what they are.
And by the way, congratulations on your election, your re-election. But Congressman, also, the perception I understand of Special Forces was different when you first got in than it is now.
And no one knew what a SEAL was when I got in. And over the course of time, books were written, movies, and now, being a SEAL or a special operations, person, everyone knows what it is. But when I got in, if you ever said the word SEAL Team 6, you were out. And to a degree, I think
You like that time better, actually.
Well, you were given more flexibility in the field. As a commander, you didn't have to ask permission, 15 layers up. And I talk about the rules of engagement and how restrictive the rules of engagement have been and how frustrated the troops are at the front line. Because if you're in harm's way, you need the right equipment, right training, and right rules of engagement to win decisively in the field of battle.
And doesn't that come from the top? Did you find that out, Scott?
It does, definitely. And I think that Ryan's plea, and I'm glad he's in Congress now, because bottom line is we have to send more ability for our troops to use rules of engagement that make sense. We've had so many incidents and we had so many loss of life because the rules of engagement don't allow our troops to engage when they know they've got an enemy coming in their direction. They know they've got to do something to protect themselves. They know that they've got a situation like we had with Extortion 17. We lost an entire platoon of SEAL Team 6 men, millions of dollars in assets, millions of, or I should say lives, you know, that should not have been lost as a result of rules of engagement that did not allow them to engage at that time. Ryan is all about, look, if we send our men into battle, then you better protect them and let them do their job.
So in American Commander, the book that's out today, Serving a Country Worth Fighting and Training the Brave Soldiers Who Lead the Way, we learn about what you guys are doing on the ground, how you've evolved. Do you think we're going to get what kind of command do you think we're going to get up top as President-elect Trump puts together his team? And he looks at General Flynn as National Security Advisor and possibly General Mattis as Secretary of Defense.
Well, I fought with General Mattis in Fallujah, and I don't think there's any better person that understands the core of our force is the sergeant, the petty officer, and the chief. And we need to make sure that we focus on what's important. That's delivering what they need at the front line. And Mattis is a warrior. I think we're too heavy in bureaucracy in the DOD. There's too many layers of decision. Push the decisions back to the front line where they belong. And Mattis, I think, is the person for that.
Scott and Congressman Ryan Zinke, thanks so much. Scott McEwen, thank you very much for putting this together. And you continue to serve the country now as a congressman. And I think we're better off before it. Thanks, Congressman.
Well, and you wrote a book, so I had to write one, too.
And you've been trying to live up to me your entire life.
I have.
You just
it's a great book. It's a great book.
It is a great book.
Thank you. At you. Senator, always great to see you. Let's talk about something that aggravates you, that you want to stop, the gourmet gas station food, the subsidies.
That's exactly right. We listed out 100 different ways that we've got out of control grants, out of control regulators, lack of coordination, all kinds of problems. But it starts for us with what we call gas station tofu. The USDA wants to have more healthy food choices for people on food stamps, what's called the SNAP program now. And so they're imposing onto convenience stores and other places to say you have to have more healthy options. So they're telling convenience stores they have to sell tofu, goat cheese, almond milk, fresh shrimp, fresh catfish. Now, in most rural America, most areas of rural America, you may have to drive 15 or 20 miles to be able to get to a grocery store. So people that are on SNAP or others are going to get their milk and their bread and their meat from a local gas station. If they tell them no, not unless you sell tofu, which is clearly not going to break even for these stations, they're just not going to provide it at all, and those folks are going to have no option.
I usually go for a power bar. That's what I always count on. What about this very important medieval smells? You have a look at the 85-day exhibition of A Sense of Beauty, where we look at medieval art and smells.
That's exactly right. And this is not just a museum study. This is 3 different agencies that all combine their money to be able to do an exhibit on medieval art and smells so that people can get a chance to go and experience this. If one agency chose to do that, I can understand. If 3 agencies are getting together and putting together federal dollars, it really raises our ire to say, why are we doing it? 3 agencies combining money to be able to do an exhibit on medieval smells.
About $500,000. Now, the other has glacial identity studies, which sounds as ridiculous as you would think, and don't text and chew motivational texts. So that's how we're supposed to be motivated now, at a cost of $500,000?
So $500,000 to text people in multiple rural areas to tell them they shouldn't chew tobacco, or a study that was multi-thousands of dollars to be able to look at glaciers from a feminist worldview and to see if the glaciers and the man-ice glacier relationship.
So the whole book has these things, like you have the costly coin toss for $50,000. Senator, what can we do to stop it? When are we going to stop laughing at this and start doing something about it?
Well, this book every year is our to-do list for our staff. So when we walk through this, we see the things in doing our own investigation. We expose them. There are areas that we think need additional oversight, need additional media attention, need additional administrative positions. We've taken care of some of them last year. We have in the back of our book what we call the touchdown areas. Fumbles at the beginning, touchdowns at the end, where we actually identify areas where we saw last year, we fixed during the course of the year, and there's many more to go.
He's one of the most productive senators in Washington. Senator James Lankford, thanks so much.
Thank you.
I think that's my goal.
All right, let's talk about your book a little bit. You tell some amazing stories. You started with a chapter called The Cut, and you talk about being cut, and you were cut from 3 different teams, and you talked about how hard that was for you as a Christian and as an individual. What was
and
that
as a
like?
player.
And as a player, yeah.
I think it's difficult because, it also cuts into your pride. It cuts into your goals. It cuts into your dreams. And when all of that feels like it's shaken, how do you react? How do you handle it? And for me, I felt like, hey, going to the Patriots was going to be a dream come true. Play under Tom Brady, and then when he retires, we'll go play for Belichick and win a bunch of...
When you had them all on the conference call to tell them you were cut, what it was like to walk away from that 15-minute meeting when you learned your career could be over, and maybe never having a uniform on again.
And maybe never having a uniform on again, and that's really hard. Yeah. And especially when you feel like you had worked so hard to get to a point, and this was it. This was going to be the opportunity. This was going to be the dream come true, and it gets shattered right in front of you. That is very difficult.
People love about you that you're a role model, that you're not afraid to share your faith. I mean, doing the Tebow, that became such a phenomenon. And also your Wish Foundation, I'll talk about that in a little while. But there was a story that struck me when I was reading the book, because it just shows what a good guy you were. You worked for Coach Belichick. You played for Coach Belichick. You really respected him. You were offered $1 million endorsement to do a one-time commercial for a company. And you went to him and you said, should I do this, Coach? What do you think? And you said, for any other coach, you never would have asked. You would have just done it and gotten the $1 million. And he said, I'd really appreciate you not doing it. And then a few weeks later, you're cut. He cuts you from the team, and you could have made that $1 million. You tweeted out after he cut you about how proud you were to be a Patriot, how much you loved the coaches and the team. What was going through your mind?
Well, I didn't want to be a distraction on the team. I wanted to be just another guy in the locker room, someone that could work, someone that could be a backup to Tom. And I didn't want to be a distraction, having stuff all over the headlines. And so that's why I called Coach Belichick to say, hey, what do you think about this? This is a great opportunity that I would say yes to, but I want to, I want to do what's right for the team first. And he just, appreciated me calling, but said, hey, listen, I would have preferred if you didn't do it. So of course I didn't, because I would put the team first. And that's not something that I look back and regret at all. It was, me trying to honor the team, and if I could do it again, I would have done the same thing.
Some people say that your faith is a distraction, and maybe that's why you have not landed with a team for a long time, and I applaud you for that, because you're putting your faith above the sport, and I think that's awesome. What about baseball? It's awesome to see how God's using you in another field now, and you put all of the, I've been to your golf tournaments. You're such an amazing person because you love all of them. Share one quick story from the book of one person that's impacted your life.
Well, it's hard to choose one because we have so many stories in there of young people who, you talk about being shaken. You talk about going through adversity and obstacles, and they've gone through more than I could ever possibly imagine. And whether, it's been cancer, whether it's been cerebral palsy, whether it's been brain tumors, on and on and on. But these kids show so much heart and resilience, and they really understand what it means to, have a relationship with God where you're not shaken in the midst of all this adversity. And one of the things that I love right now is one of the girls I write about in the book. Her name's Robin. Well, we have another Wish girl named Kate who might only have a couple days to live in Ohio right now, but she's from Jacksonville, and Robin's writing letters to encourage her right now, and they become best friends. And I think it's really awesome to understand what it means to have people around you that love and support you. And Robin's writing that, going through all of her adversity, and yet she's encouraging another one of our Wish girls, and it's just really encouraging and inspiring.
That's great. So many women out there want to marry you, Tom. Are you dating anyone? Do you talk about it publicly?
I'm not dating anyone right now, but...
What about the key around your neck?
This was made by a sweet girl in Houston who does a lot with our Night to Shine. We have a worldwide movement for people with special needs, and this is a way to support them.
Right. He allows some of the special needs individuals to go to prom night, and when New Year's Eve rolls around, that's what he's doing, making a difference. And then going down to Haiti and helping kids in orphanages. You're an amazing role model.
Thank you so much, Ainsley.
We need more people like you around. So everyone buy his book. It's a great book. I think you'll enjoy reading it. It's called Shaken. Thank you.
It'll taste great.
Hey, I wonder what Tucker Carlson did over the Thanksgiving vacation.
Well, let's ask him.
Tucker, what'd you do?
I just drank Bud Light, waiting for that special gold. I drank Buckler. No, I went fishing in Florida, as always. Come on.
Fantastic.
Buckler is a great non-alcoholic beer, isn't
yes,
it?
Yes, it is.
That's my favorite one.
I totally agree.
Take that, O'Douls.
Okay, they might be actually drinking over at Trump headquarters because, Jill Stein has thrown an IED into the whole party over there with this recount request. Do you really think she thinks the Russians rigged the election?
Well, thank you for saying that, because that's what it's really about. And most stories covering this don't mention that. The underlying impetus for this recount is the idea that the voting machines, the electronic voting machines, were somehow rigged or controlled by someone outside the government, most likely the Russians. That's a pretty big allegation. Now, I don't dismiss anything. There's no evidence of that, but I mean, I'm open-minded. I want to see the evidence. This recount doesn't bother me, actually. I don't think it's likely to change the outcome. And if there's a suggestion that happened, let's find out. Trump, meanwhile, is also making, as you know, a suggestion that the election was rigged, saying that 2 to 3 million people voted illegally. That's also being dismissed as a crackpot theory, and maybe it is. There's no evidence for that either. But both of these together add up to something pretty significant, which is people don't believe in the veracity of the election results on either side, and that is a massive problem. I really think there needs to be some kind of investigation into the results, not to overturn them, but to reassure the rest of us that the system works.
No, Tucker, there's no way this recount does nothing but put more doubt, more grist in the mill, more.
Yeah, you may be right.
It just does nothing but hurt the president-elect. And for Jill Stein to get traction when she didn't matter all for the last 18 months is unbelievable to me.
I think the purpose of this, from the perspective of Jill Stein, is not to make certain that the system is one of integrity. I absolutely agree with that. And the effect might be to delegitimize in the minds of some on the left Donald Trump, but he's already delegitimized in their view anyway. I just think we need to take 3 steps back and actually make certain that the average person believes in the sanctity of the system. And here's how you do that: by making sure that only people who are eligible to vote do so. Do you know how many states require, for example, proof of citizenship before voting? Out of 50, 0. Only 1, Kansas, tried, and in September that requirement was overturned by federal judges. So look, there are over 10 million people here illegally. There's obviously a massive incentive on the part of the left for them to vote. Why do we have a system where they can vote? You know, we have over 10 states issue driver's licenses to illegal aliens.
Yeah,
so, like,
good question.
there is the capacity for fraud.
You know, Tucker, you brought something up, and it just reminded me. If they're, let's say the Russians did hack into the Wisconsin voting machines, would you have the Wisconsin Secretary of State do it, or would you have the NSA do it? I mean, maybe they're calling the wrong people to look into whether or not.
That's exactly right. I mean, look, this is a major allegation that a foreign power somehow, by remote, controlled American voting machines. By the way, if there's any proof at all, any suggestion that that's actually true, that's a 5-alarm fire in the center of our democracy. I mean, we really need to get on that. It's a pretty outrageous thing to say if you don't have proof, to allege or even imply, which they absolutely don't. But, I mean, shouldn't somebody say, okay, let's take a sober look, not necessarily recount the votes, but at the voting machines? Like, what are you saying? And press the people who are pushing this to be specific. Like, what exactly are you saying?
Yeah, exactly. There should be more proof.
Let's talk about the transition team, because Kellyanne Conway was on the and Newt Gingrich on the Sunday shows talking about how they're not for Mitt Romney. But if Trump chooses Mitt Romney, my thought was she's risking a lot, because what if he chooses Mitt Romney? What does that mean for her?
Well, she's obviously, and this is just my view, I think she's a very brave person to say that. She clearly means it.
Yeah, I do. I agree.
And if this is the new era we're living in, now everyone in Washington is scoffing, how dare she speak out of turn and without permission? But my view is how refreshing it is to see someone say what she really thinks on television for once. I mean, she's making a real case, and it's two parts. The first is, if Mitt Romney was, had a lot of support among Republican voters, he probably would have been the nominee. He doesn't, and therefore he wasn't. And so there are a lot of Trump voters who don't want to see this happen. And second, maybe more significantly, does Mitt Romney agree with Donald Trump's foreign policy positions? That's kind of a basic question. And I think the answer is probably no. So for her to say this, I mean, I thought it was great.
It's funny you say what the reaction is from folks in Washington, the establishment, because everywhere else, like in the South and in the flyover states, they're all applauding Kellyanne for saying that, because they're mad at him for what he said, and he didn't support Donald Trump over the last year. Should he apologize?
But also, how nice is? Oh, should Romney apologize? I mean, I don't know. You'd have to think there would be some kind of, reckoning or reconciliation between the two of them. If you say a guy is too immoral to be the president of the United States, and then you say, I'm going to serve in his cabinet, I mean, there's got to be a transition from one to the other. But I just think, Kellyanne Fitzpatrick saying what she thinks.
Right.
I mean, in D.C., a scandal is something that we didn't expect to happen, I guess.
Right.
But I hope we see more of this.
And I hope I meet Kellyanne Fitzpatrick.
Yeah, is that
I
her
always
maiden
called her
name?
Conway. I feel so
Is
bad.
that her maiden
I'm so
name?
sorry. I'm so sorry. I've known her for so long.
All the
Her name was
Irish are
Kellyanne
not the same.
Fitzpatrick.
Okay, please,
Heather
Tucker.
says that's her maiden name.
There you go.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right, so you know before.
I beg your pardon.
Right, so the other thing is, the word is that Donald Trump is not happy that Kellyanne Conway did this, so it's we're wondering if they're boxing him in and doing it. And personally, I don't think there's anything wrong with Mitt Romney. It's just that Mitt Romney came out and went against Donald Trump. So you have to think it's going to take a couple of years for him to convince people in a few interviews that he's not. And when there's a transition, maybe that'll be a good time for Romney, if there's an opening that he likes, to go forward. But just the last time we heard him talk, he was begging us not to vote for Donald Trump. Meanwhile,
And again, on moral grounds.
Yeah.
You know, he's like disgusting. You can't vote for him. You know?
All right, let's talk, if we can, about sanctuary cities. Among the many things that that Donald Trump says he's going to do is going to stop it and deny federal funding for those cities that do it. Where is that in the things to do list if Tucker Carlson handed Donald Trump a things to do list?
Well, I mean, I think it's maybe number 1 or 2. I mean, what's so remarkable to me as someone who's been paying attention for the last 20 years is for generations, liberals have said the states do not have a right to ignore federal law. That was the lesson of the civil rights era. That's why Orville Faubus was wrong and President Eisenhower was right. The state of Arkansas said, we're just not doing that. And the Fed said, no, you must, because it's federal law. And liberals, and me too, have said, yes, that's exactly right. And now they're saying, you know what, if there's a federal law that we disagree with, we're just going to ignore it, and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, the two cannot coexist. And so as a theoretical, as a matter of principle, I think it really matters, but also as a practical matter, you can't have cities where people who are totally, unknown, their origin is unknown, are floating around and living. It's a threat to national security. And we know this from the 9/11 report. We know that I think it was 6 out of the 19 hijackers had violated immigration law. And one of the key recommendations of that report was you've got to kind of know who's living in your country or else there are potentially really bad consequences. That's common sense. And so these mayors, for political reasons, are ignoring that, and I think that cannot stand.
Not just mayors, it's governors down in Texas. Greg Abbott was responding to a tweet. A guy said, hey, the city of Austin just reinforced that they will forever be a sanctuary city. And then he came back and he said, yes, I'm going. Is there anything you can do to reverse it? And the governor said, yes, I'm going to sign a law that bans sanctuary cities. Also, I've already issued an order cutting funding to sanctuary cities. That's really what Donald Trump can do as commander-in-chief. He can cut off the funding, just like that.
Well, it's a little much to say to the federal government, look, we're not going to obey your laws. We reject your laws, man, but we still want the subsidy. I mean, you know what I mean? It's like a little like one of your teenage kids saying, I'm not going to obey anything you say, and up yours, I'm giving you the finger, but you still have to, pay me, $500 a month and my tuition. I mean, like, you can't have both, sort of, right?
All right, Tucker Carlson, it was a great start to your show at 7 o'clock, and this week, somewhat controversial. You're going to do a best of Tucker Carlson, looking back at the week that was.
It's early, yes. I'm also doing an autobiography.
Tucker, congratulations on the success.
Thanks, guys.
Everyone's
It's great to see you.
We're all happy
and
for you.
especially you, Ainsley. Thank you.
I love you.
His favorite.
Thank you.
As usual.
Sorry, guys.
Points are out right away.
For a flurry of executive actions, the White House now reviewing nearly 100 so-called midnight regulations. But Mr. Trump has pledged to repeal every single executive order. And it's the campaign promise that made Bernie Sanders so popular.
Make public colleges and universities tuition-free. 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 Free. Free. Free? Free.
But maybe we don't need free college after all. In the last few years, at least 50 public colleges and universities across our country have lowered tuition for out-of-state students by more than 10%. That's great news. All right, Steve, over to you.
Step in the right direction. Ainsley, thank you. The left is looking for a new DNC chair, but are they looking too far to the left? Apparently their top choice is that man right there, Minnesota Congressman Keith Ellison. He's taking heat for extreme comments from his past, including once upon a time calling for a separate country here in the United States for African Americans. Is this what the party leadership has in mind? Joining us right now for his reaction is Kevin Jackson, Fox News contributor and executive director of the Black Sphere, joins us today from St. Louis. Kevin, good morning to you.
Good to talk to you, Steve.
So explain to us, if you will, because I'm sure you did a little research, how Keith Ellison suggested a black state.
Well, it's not so much that he suggested it. You guys have already pretty much teased that that is what he said. I think the bigger implication is the idea that people call Donald Trump racist, when this is the person that the Democrats want to lead their party, a person who says black people should have a separate state. And he's endorsed by Bernie Sanders. He's supported by Chuck Schumer. Many of party leadership of the Democrats support a person who wants to essentially peel black people out of a country that we are a very good, an integral part of, and make a separate state. I would ask Keith Ellison what he thinks Africans coming from Africa are, why they come to the United States. They don't come to the United States to be black. Africans come to the United States to become Americans, not to become blacks.
Sure.
And so this idea that the Democrats condone these types of racist policies, quite frankly, I'm happy to see Keith Ellison. I'd love to see him become the new Democrat leader, because he certainly represents them very well.
So you feel that if he were to become the leader of the DNC, he would pull the DNC so far to the left, it would be better for people in the middle and to the right?
Certainly. Keith Ellison is what I call an ethnocentric racist. And everything about him has nothing to do with making America better, making the Democrat Party better. It has to do with essentially catering to blacks. And look, the policies that Donald Trump and many on the right are trying to implement will raise the ocean. It will raise all the boats in the ocean. What Keith Ellison wants to do is pretend that blacks have some unique problems in America, which we don't. The problems that blacks face in America are problems caused by liberals, problems caused by Democrats, and Keith Ellison wants to pretend that it's something different. It's not. It's that. And if all we need to do is get sanity back into politics, and a perfect example, Steve, is if you were to reverse this, if Donald Trump or any other Republican had said what Keith Ellison said, do you believe that we could be touting this person as a leader within the Republican Party or a leader in the conservative movement?
Sure.
The answer is no. He'd be considered blatantly racist.
Yeah, that is such a good point. I wonder, and I don't know that anybody has queried him, if he were to lead the DNC, if they would be behind this recall election, that the recount, that is to say, in Wisconsin, that is being waged by the Green Party right now, which, Jill Stein came in fourth. The Democrat came in second, and yet she's the one who's asking for all the votes to be recounted. Seems a little odd.
Well, all these things, Steve, point to the desperation of the Democrats. We're talking about a group of people who have lost an election fair and square. They believed in their heart of hearts that they were going to win, because that's the fallacy of their belief system, is that they think that they're on the right track. Many of America were talking about this for years, and certainly over the last year. What's interesting about this is, yet again, the Democrats have been talking about, we ignored flyover country. We ignored the blue-collar white vote. And then what do? They want to put an ethnocentric black racist in charge of the party, because that's going to bring back the blue-collar white vote. That just shows you the level of idiocy that exists in that party.
Well, let's see what they wind up doing. Kevin Jackson, we thank you very much for joining us today from St. Louis. Thank you, sir.
My pleasure, Steve.
They put a GPS chip in one of my ears, and they just kept pulling me back into the studio.
And they did. They actually, it was a bit of an attraction.
It's bottom of the barrel.
Well, the thing is, Ed, people want you to work, because the most exciting story right now in the transition is the most important position, arguably, and that's Secretary of State.
Yeah.
This thing is being played out in public. The latest report is Kellyanne Conway is doing this in defiance of what Donald Trump wants.
Which is really remarkable. I mean, look, this all started really on this show on Wednesday. You guys had Mike Huckabee on, and he said, it'd be ridiculous if Mitt Romney got this, because I think folks like Huckabee, Giuliani, Gingrich are all looking at this saying, we were really loyal to Donald Trump, and we're, not getting the key jobs in this administration. Why is this guy, who called him a phony and a fraud, getting maybe the biggest job in the cabinet? And then I heard on Thursday from someone very senior in the transition, and we reported over the weekend, that there's a discussion going on between President-elect Trump and others about whether Mitt Romney should have to apologize in some public way, a letter, a statement or something, to try to clear the air after all of that and try to bring the party together. What I find interesting is that over the weekend I also heard that Mike Pence was involved in this, that the vice president-elect was on the phone with Mitt Romney. It also tells me that that it's not over, despite the criticism from Newt Gingrich on this show yesterday, Kellyanne Conway on multiple shows. But look, at the end of the day, Romney is still viable here.
Sure.
Because one man is deciding this. It's actually President-elect Trump. And Steve and I were talking in the hallway a few minutes ago, and I was thinking back to, I asked George W. Bush a question as president in 2006 in the Rose Garden about all these critics of Donald Rumsfeld. And they wanted him fired over the Iraq War. And if you remember, George W. Bush's answer was, I hear the critics, but I'm the decider.
Right.
And his critics were all mad at, oh, George W. Bush won't listen to anybody. But you know what? He stuck with his people. He was loyal.
Sure.
And at the end of the day, if Donald Trump wants Mitt Romney as Secretary of State, it's going to happen.
And what if
regardless of what the
what
others.
if he does choose him? Then what does Mitt Romney need to say to the Donald Trump voters who are upset with him?
Well, I think, look, what Mike Huckabee said on this program almost a week ago was prescient. He was saying there's got to be some sort of public acknowledgement that he didn't just say, I'm not voting for Donald Trump. He didn't just say, I disagree with him on foreign policy. He said he's a bad guy. His character is wrong. He's a fraud.
He went out of his way.
You have to do something in the estimation, not of me. I'm just reporting what people around Donald Trump are saying. They believe that there has to be some public mea culpa.
This is what I heard constantly among other Republicans, including lawmakers, was, I don't understand where this is coming from. I tried to call him and talk him out of doing this. We don't understand where this is coming from. And these are some of these people, two of the people that said it to me were never Trumpers.
Sure.
So I just think he doesn't need to apologize. I just think he needs to explain himself.
Yeah, I think there's a couple things that work. One is, you know, some of these same critics who were saying back in the campaign and then during the beginning of the transition, Donald Trump won't listen to anyone. He doesn't want to hear other voices. He only wants, you know, a small kitchen cabinet around him.
He's the decider.
He's the decider, and now he's reaching out. And maybe he just thinks, you know what, I want to bring in someone who's been a critic and sort of unify the party, maybe unify the country, maybe not, but that could be one thing
he's
here.
measured, he's smart, he looks the part, acts the part.
Mitt Romney?
Yeah.
Well, and people inside the transition also tell me there's something else going on here, which is about Rudy Giuliani, which, yes, he's been very loyal to Donald Trump, but they're concerned inside the transition about his international business dealings. It doesn't mean he's disqualified.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean that he might not get some other important job. By the way, Rudy Giuliani doesn't need a cabinet post to be important.
Yeah.
He doesn't need a cabinet post to have the president's ear. He's going to have it whether you put a title on his business card or not.
You know, I just think if Mitt Romney has a public statement or writes a note, a forgive me note, I just don't think people are going to buy it because they're going to go,
might not.
You know what? He's just saying that to get the job.
Right, and then if you get the job after being sort of on bended knee there, apologizing, how do you go around the world representing the President of the United States?
Wait, I thought you said that guy, your boss was a fraud.
You said he was a fraud. He was a phony.
That's why, just to explain it out, I think it's interesting, too, because Kellyanne Conway has said in the past to New Yorker magazine, if I want to reach Donald Trump, oftentimes we do it through television because that's we know he watches.
And that's interesting as well, because how is it that Kellyanne Conway, who was the campaign manager, clearly had the confidence of the then nominee, Donald Trump, now has the confidence of the president-elect, we believe, because she says that right after the election victory, he offered her an important job that it looks like she's going to take. We don't know, a senior advisor or something inside the White House. So why can't she just pick up the phone?
You know,
why is she doing it on TV?
You know what? It could be part of the strategy. It could be a good cop, bad cop thing, because this way they're able to get both messages out from each of them.
And sooner or later, the decider has to step in and say, here's the decision, right?
All right.
Good to see you guys.
Ed, thank you very much.
Happy Thanksgiving.
All right.
Merry Christmas is what you've got to start
we got to
saying
move
now.
on.
Happy Cyber Monday. Cyber Monday. I'm setting up over the corner.
Cyber Monday started last Monday. I started getting emails, from the NBA store where I buy my son gifts all the time. Cyber Monday, it's now a week. It's 2 weeks long.
Right. And by the way, that's not a great place to shop for your wife, but it's great to shop for your son.
He loves the NBA.
Hey, side his transition team over who should be our next Secretary of State. Morning, everybody. Hope you had a great break with your family and friends. I'm Bill Hemmer, back here live. How you doing?
I did. Did you?
See it. Fantastic.
It was great,
really
right?
great times.
Nice to have a few days off.
Yeah.
All right.
Good to be
So
back.
welcome back, everybody. Back to work and back to business today. I'm Martha McCallum. So this seems like a pretty bitter internal battle that is going on in the transition team over the nation's top diplomat decision. All of this now going public over the weekend. The latest reports point to two leading candidates. You've got longtime Trump supporter Rudy Giuliani, and then in the other corner, you've got Governor Mitt Romney, an outspoken opponent who during the campaign called the president-elect a phony and a con. Top Trump loyalists are not happy about the idea of Mitt Romney as potential Secretary of State.
people feel consultants were nothing but awful to Donald Trump for a year.
Okay, so that's one thing to follow today. The other one is this. Mr. Trump sounding off on the recount efforts underway in Wisconsin, calling it sad and ridiculous.
What a weekend, right? Peter Doocy is live outside Trump Tower in New York City. So, Peter, do we expect that we might get a decision on Secretary of State or any other posts as early as today?
We think that it's possible, Martha, because the transition team had been telling us to not expect anything until the week after the holiday, so that would be today, and they are always full of surprises. So we are here outside Trump Tower just waiting for word. To expand a little bit on the controversy surrounding the Secretary of State, what's important to note is that Kellyanne Conway, who you just heard from there, is the person that the transition team has been using almost exclusively to get word out from the inside, from the top tier of the transition. And she has been a very vocal anti-Mitt Romney voice for the last several days. There has not been anybody from the inside of the transition team coming out and pitching Mitt Romney, talking about the pros of possibly having him as the Secretary of State. So that sounds like it's going to be kind of a complicated decision, maybe not one that we would get today or in the next few days. But today, here at Trump Tower, Mr. President-elect does have 8 folks coming by to take the elevator ride up to the 26th floor for job interviews, and the transition team is telling us they like multiple people for multiple different positions, which makes sense when you look at the very least, their job titles. There is the Milwaukee County Sheriff David Clark, who gained a lot of prominence recently as a critic of the Black Lives Matter movement. Then you've got Pennsylvania Republican Congressman Lou Barletta and Paul Atkins, a one-time SEC commissioner. There were a pair of cabinet nominations over the holiday weekend. And somebody else that we're keeping an eye on who has not accepted his request to accept a nomination would be Dr. Ben Carson. First half of last week, there was an update every day about whether or not he wanted to be the HUD secretary in the next administration, but it's been all quiet all weekend, so now we're waiting for that. Martha?
Fascinating. All right. So in terms of this recount story that also bubbled up a lot of the weekend, Peter, what is Donald Trump's counter to the pushback on the Wisconsin vote?
Martha, the president-elect agrees that there were millions of illegally cast votes. He just thinks that it benefited the Democrats, and he thinks that the only thing all these illegal votes did was dent his margin of victory. So at the end of the long holiday weekend, the president-elect took to Twitter and he wrote this, quote, "In addition to winning the Electoral College in a landslide, I won the popular vote if you deduct the millions of people who voted illegally." And he said, quote, "Serious voter fraud in Virginia, New Hampshire, and California. So why isn't the media reporting on this? Serious bias, big problem." Mr. Trump also subtly swiped at all the Democrats who are knocking him for not winning the popular vote with this pair of tweets. He said, "It would have been much easier for me to win the so-called popular vote than the Electoral College in that I would only campaign in 3 or 4 states. Instead of the 15 states that I visited, I would have won even more easily and convincingly, but smaller states are forgotten." Now, as for the talk about illegal voting, so far Mr. Trump has not offered any concrete evidence that there were millions of illegally cast votes, but neither have the Clinton campaign lawyers who have joined up with this Wisconsin recount effort because they say they think there may have been outside interference aiding the president-elect.
Yeah.
Martha?
It's going to keep you busy. Peter, thank you very much.
More now on the recount, what it all means, what it's all about. John McCormack, senior writer for the Weekly Standard. John, how you doing? Good morning to you in Washington, D.C. Take you back to November 9th, the morning after the election, when Hillary Clinton said the following.
We must accept this result and then look to the future. Donald Trump is going to be our president. We owe him an open mind and the chance to lead.
So that was then. What's up now?
Well, what the Clinton campaign is arguing is that, hey, we didn't file this recount petition. Jill signed it at the Green Party, and we're just
joined
there.
it.
They joined it, exactly. So people, I think you might argue that, the Clinton campaign is maybe hiding behind Jill Stein's skirt here. So I do think that the Clinton campaign, if they go out and they start suggesting that the vote was illegally hacked, I mean, there's no evidence for that whatsoever. But they do raise that possibility. They note that Russians were involved in trying to influence the outcome of the election. But there is no evidence whatsoever that the election was hacked. And it would take, not only Wisconsin, but it takes Pennsylvania and Michigan to overturn the results in the Electoral College. Trump won Pennsylvania by nearly 70,000 votes, Michigan by about 10,000, Wisconsin by 30,000. And more to the point, they've already checked the paper ballots with spot checks in Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. So if there were anything amiss, I don't see why that wouldn't have been caught already.
Here is the Wisconsin final tally. Donald Trump beat Hillary Clinton by a percentage point, about 27,000 raw votes, and Jill Stein barely got more than 27,000. She was 30,980. Republicans would argue what Democrats are trying to do is make Donald Trump look illegitimate even before he takes the oath of office, John.
Well, certainly, and some people are guilty of that by suggesting things baselessly in the media, suggesting that there are statistical anomalies. There was a report in New York Magazine, actually, that kicked this all off, and the statistical analysis there was quickly debunked. If you actually look nationwide, the statistics between counties that use paper ballots and non-paper ballots, there really isn't much of a difference when you account for demographics. So I do think that people have to be aware that they shouldn't be trying to undermine the legitimacy of the vote, and that goes for everyone from the media to Democrats, as well as the president-elect, who has now gone out and said without evidence of his own that there were millions of votes illegally cast.
2 million votes, in fact. He says Jill Stein wants to raise money. By my count on Sunday morning, I think she had raised more than $6 million. There may be a point to that. John, thank you so much. John McCormack, analysis there from Washington, D.C. Thanks. 8 past.
Thank you.
A 2-day memorial marking the death of Cuban dictator Fidel Castro is getting underway in Havana's Revolution Square. While in the streets of Miami's Little Havana, Cuban exiles have been celebrating the death of the man that they call a brutal tyrant. Texas Senator Ted Cruz describes the moment that his father found out that Castro was gone.
You know, it is thankful that he is no longer with us.
Steve Harrigan, live in Havana, Cuba. Good morning, Steve.
Martha, we've been hearing some cannons going off over my shoulder. The official morning period getting underway with a 21-gun salute here and in the city of Santiago as well. Today we expect tens of thousands of Cubans to march by a 9-story portrait of a young Fidel Castro in Revolution Square. As is often the case in Cuba, it will be difficult to determine whether they are there out of genuine emotion for the man who ruled this country with an iron fist for the past 50 years, or whether they are instructed to do so by the government. After that, on Wednesday, Castro's ashes will be moved across the country, transported to the city of Santiago in a 3-day procession. That's where he began the Cuban Revolution in 1953, and that's where he will be interred on Sunday morning. As for what he leaves behind, his 85-year-old brother, Raul Castro, in power officially for the past 8 years. Some think perhaps Raul could quicken the pace of really temporary economic changes they've made here so far, but he has been a lifelong communist who said he will step down 2 years from now, so we could see a real generational change here in the leadership in Cuba. One big outstanding question: where do relations between the U.S. and Cuba go from here? Under Obama, we've seen a warming. That could change under President Trump. Back to you.
All right. Thank you very much, Steve. Steve Harrigan reporting from Havana. And Donald Trump tweeting just a moment ago about this, saying that if Cuba is unwilling to make a better deal for the Cuban people, the Cuban American people, and the U.S. as a whole, I will terminate the deal, of course referring to the deal that was made by President Obama and the leadership of Cuba to open things up a bit.
A lot of reaction coming up on that in a moment here. President-elect Donald Trump had